Hey, what's up, Internet? Let's build my new M2. Whoop. Before we get started, there's one more thing I want to mention. I just got done editing the video, and I wanted to let you know that in the description, you can jump ahead to the different sections where you're either building the sled or the Z-axis assembly or just putting the whole thing together. You can see all that in the description and also how to get a hold of us. So let us know if you need anything and have fun building. So the first thing we're going to do is finish the Z-axis assembly. So we're going to need the Z-axis assembly. We're going to need the Z-axis assembly bag that came in the box with the belt in it, and bag H. Inside of bag H, we have 4 button head screws, the Z-axis motor bracket, and an Allen wrench. And we are going to mount that right here. So you can see there are 4 little screw holes right here. So we're going to kind of line this up with those holes, and then going to fit our screw in here. And I like to line one of them up and kind of get it a little bit in there, and then kind of line the next one up too before I start tightening them, just to kind of make sure that the tracks are lined up together. There we go. And get all 4 of these in here. And then once we get all 4 of them in here, we can tighten with the Allen wrench. All right, so I've got my bracket on here, but I haven't tightened it all the way. And that's because we're gonna tighten it all the way when we get our belt on there so we can make sure it's nice and snug. This next step, we are going to attach the Z motor. So inside of bag H, we are gonna get these 6 black little Allen bolts right here, and the tiny Allen wrench and the Z motor and our assembly. And then we are going to mount this motor on here. So we're going to pull this all the way to the end. I'm pulling it closest to the camera. And then I'm just going to kind of finger tighten and get all of these in here so it's attached. And then once it is completely attached, then I'm going to take the Allen and tighten them all the way. All right, now that I've got my motor mounted, I'm ready for step 3. So inside the belt bag, there's the big gear and the 2 small grub screws. So we are going to kind of put these grub screws in here, and just like before, not get them in all the way, just kind of get them in there so they're attached. And then we are going to set this on here on our motor. And we want to make sure that we line up the flat end of our motor, and we can see that there's a little flat end right here. Kind of move it that way with one of these grubs to make sure that that grub tightens it all the way. And then we're going to use that Allen wrench, that larger one that we've been using, to tighten those grub screws. Step 4, inside that belt bag again, we have the other smaller gear and the smaller grub screws and the smaller Allen. Whoop, dropped one. Drops around on the table. There it is. So with these right here, we are going to mount this on this Z-axis right here. Now when we put these grubs in here, don't tighten it all the way, just kind of leave it on here, because we're going to need to line it up with the belt in the next step. All right, so this next step, I've got this on here, but it's not tight. I have my small Allen wrench that I've been using and the belt from that belt bag, and we're going to fit this on here. And here is where you can see this moves back and forth. So I can kind of get this belt on here, and then I can pull it around this small gear. And it might be kind of a tight fit, but we can get it around there. Might even pull this gear up because this is kind of stuck right here. So I'm going to pull this up a little bit and then push it a little bit more to make sure we can get it around it. There we go. And then now when this is on here, we're ready to tighten this gear, but we want to make sure that these are level with each other. So we want to make sure that when we tighten it, it's level. So this belt for our Z-axis on this Z-axis lead screw right here is the same height on both of these. So I'm going to go ahead and line them up and then tighten it. So this next step is a little tricky. Now that I've got my lead screw gear really tight with these 2 grub screws, I'm going to get the larger Allen wrench we've been using, and now we're going to tighten our belt. So to tighten this, we're going to put our hand around this Z motor right here and then pull away. And then I can push with my thumb right here, and you can see how tight this belt gets. You really can't get this belt too tight, and it has to be tight for your Z-axis to work well, because it needs to be able to move the router bit up and down. So I'm going to push against this super hard, and then I'm going to tighten these Allens on top as tight as I can. And I'm gonna pull on it and give it pressure the whole time. Now that I got it tight, I'm gonna kind of squeeze this belt a little bit, and I'm gonna go around one more time with this end of the Allen wrench so I can get more torque and make sure that it is super tight. Yeah, all the way around, because I don't want this moving at all, especially not when the router bit is spinning. So I'm gonna go all the way around one more time, just to double check. Now that our Z-axis assembly is all built, we are ready to attach the router clamp. So this is gonna attach with our 3mm Allen that we've been using. We've already got the bolts right here, and then these 4 holes is where it lines up with. So we just take these out, and then we'll bolt them in from the back here, and then tighten them all nice and snug. So I'm gonna do that right now. All right, I've got my clamp all tightened and assembled with my Allen wrench. And this is from bag E, by the way, so it's the one that goes with the motors. And now we are ready to rock. So I can just adjust this here for my router when it's time to attach that. And now let's go ahead and grab our sled. All right, it's sled time. So we're gonna need our sled. We're gonna need our ring carriage, our 2 roller bearing carriages, our 3 L brackets for our ring carriage, our roller bearings, bag F, and bag G. So we're gonna start oh, and one more thing. We'll also need a size 13 wrench right here, or an equivalent, because we are gonna need those for our roller bearing carriages to tighten them together. So the first thing that we're gonna do is we are gonna take this ring, and then we're gonna set these carriages on here like this, and then our roller bearings are gonna go inside of here. All right, so I've got all my contents of bag F right here in my bearings. I've got my roller bearing carriages right here in my ring. And you can see they're in between here, and we wanna put these on here first because otherwise they can't get past these brackets, they get stuck. So we're gonna set it on here like that. And then we're gonna take our bearings out right here, and we're gonna take one bearing, and we're gonna take a washer and put a washer on each side like this. And then we're gonna take this right here, this bolt, and it's gonna feed through here, and you can see there's a large side and a small side, and we're gonna fit it through, and we might need to kind of spread this open a little bit, and then fit this bolt through the washer, and then the roller bearing, and then the other washer, and then out the other ends. And might need to spin a little bit. Come on, we almost got it. Almost got it. There we go. Kind of spin it a little. Awesome. And then we're going to take these locking nuts. We're going to take one of these and put it on this side. And then we can kind of hand tighten it a little bit. And then when it starts to get tight, we're going to take our wrench right here and set that here, and then use the large Allen key here to tighten this. And you want to get this tight to where this part doesn't rock back and forth anymore. This part doesn't move, but this still rotates freely. So it's kind of that middle ground. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these on this side and put both of these on there, and then put them on this side too. I've got them mounted on here. I've got them tight. Now, as I mentioned before, you don't want to have them too tight. So these don't move, but these bearings, they still spill. They're not spilling anywhere. They still roll freely right here as I'm pulling on them. And you can see the reason why we put these on here is because you can't get them off. So if you put these together and then try to put them on the ring, you are stuck. So that's why we wanted to do that first. Our next step, we are going to mount the L brackets to our ring carriage. So these L brackets and the ring carriage, it goes on here like this, and we're going to use bag G and the wing nuts and the little Allens that are in there to attach these around on our ring. So we can get our L brackets on our ring carriage, and then our ring carriage will go on our sled. As we've got our bolts right here, I've got this partially assembled, but I am putting this in where the Allen bolt is right here in the top slot, and then feeding it through this part here to put the wing nut in the back. So we can kind of see here, if I spin this around, we can see the wing nut is right there, and then we can tighten it. And then once we get it on here, then we're going to hold on to the wing nuts and use the Allen wrench that came in this bag, so the small Allen wrench, right here, to tighten them. So we'll just kind of hold on to it, and then we can tighten it and get it nice and snug. You can even turn it this way too and get it nice and torqued and get it really tight all the way around. And it's right here to where it's resting on the L bracket, just like that. So the ring is resting on the bracket right in that middle section. So I got my ring carriage all together, so I'm ready to mount it to my sled. So we're gonna line it up, and we can see that these have little holes in them. Right here, we can see where these little holes, they're little pilot holes that we wanna line up. So we line our sled up like so with these pilot holes. And then we're gonna take our wood screws that are in the same bag, bag G, and then use our power screwdriver and screw them all in to these power holes, and being mindful to make sure that they are lined up. So I like to do one and each one all the way around, and then go back around and make sure, and not tighten them all the way until I know that it's all secure like it needs to be, and then go ahead and seat them all down. All right, so now that I've got my ring carriage attached to my sled, we're gonna peel this off of the acrylic. And it would have been on there a second ago, but my mic was off when I just did this a second ago. So you peel this paper off, and this is for your dust collector. So your elbow sits right here for your PVC pipe, and then your hose connects to that to be able to suck in all of the debris and stuff that's being cut by your router bit. So we can see this, the height on this, it doesn't really matter as long as it's all a consistent height, because you're actually gonna adjust this up and down for different material. If you have like a thick material that you're cutting and you wanna maybe move this whole carriage up and down a little bit, you can shift your entire router up and down. So I've got mine set right here, but you can put these anywhere. And that's why they have these wing nuts in here and then this Allen here. So you can adjust it for whatever height of material that you're cutting. All right, well, let's grab our Z-axis assembly and we'll be ready for the next step. Well, now let's get this all together. So to get it together, we're gonna need our sled that we've built, our Z-axis assembly that we built, and then the bag that had the belt in it that came with the Z-axis assembly, and a Phillips screwdriver. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use this bag, and what's left in here are the T-nuts. And if I can just pull one out here, I'll show y'all. This is a feat of human engineering that is so awesome, where when this is screwed on here, and as it tightens inside of something like this, where it has this groove, this slot, this is made at an angle so it will turn sideways and lock in place into that slot. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all 6 of these in the sled right here on these 6 holes. So we'll just take this and put it through here in the bottom, just like that. And then we'll take our T-nuts and put it on there. There we go, just like that. So we'll do that all the way around. And we don't want to tighten them all the way though, because we're going to tighten them when this is on there. So we're going to get all of these on here first, and then we'll be ready to mount our Z-axis assembly. I got them all on here. And now what I want to do is I want to turn all of these like this direction. And you can see they're not all tight because I don't want to tighten them yet. Because when I tighten, I want them to turn from this way sideways to lock into these grooves. So I'm going to turn them all this way, and I'm also going to check the bottom because I want to make sure that these are all flush in these little countersunk holes so I can kind of feel over them. And some of them are maybe sticking out and they're a little bit bumpy. We want this to move smoothly over our material. So just make sure that they're pushed in all the way, and we can kind of push them a little, and that'll also give you a little bit more up here on top. So see, when I push that in, now I've got more space on top because I'm going to need that space when I slide this in here. So go ahead and check the rest of these. There we go. I think it was just that one. Kind of pushed up a little bit. And if it moves a little bit, that's all right. That just means that that hole is big enough. And I'm going to take this and we're going to slide it across here so we can kind of see where it fits. And kind of fit it on there. And then we can kind of move it back and forth a little bit. There we go, till it falls in place. And we can see if it's not moving in there, you can kind of wiggle it a little bit. There we go. And then when you shake it, it'll fit right in place. So now we want to leave this on here and not tighten it yet. We're just sitting it on here because now it's time to grab our router. Okay, so I've got my router and I've got my clamp and everything. So I'm just gonna slide this in right here. And if it doesn't fit, well, that's what these are for. You can use your 3mm wrench to kind of loosen it here a little bit. And if you just got a router like me and you're new to this, then you also have to take off this handheld shield too. So this is if you were actually doing the routing, but the robot is gonna do all the work. So we need to take that off so it can fit right here. All right, so I'm gonna tighten this up and then we'll be ready for the next step. I've got my router attached, but this next part is super tricky. So I made sure that I got these super snug because we don't want this moving at all. But now I need to tighten these T-nuts. Now, you could try to hold onto this and lift the whole thing up and then go under here with that, with the screwdriver, not the Allen wrench, with your screwdriver, which mine is laying around here somewhere. And you can screw it, but I like to push it off the table, kind of like this. Well, maybe not off the table, because you don't want it to fall, but hang it over the table where you've got one hand on the table here, and then you can tighten the T-nuts. And you can actually take these little end pieces off to look and make sure that the T-nuts turn. And I absolutely recommend doing that. It's taken off, especially on the outside ones. So if you take both of these off, you can see that I got this right here. You can just pop these ends off. And then when I spin this on the bottom, you can see that the T-nuts turn sideways. And it's super important to make sure that these parts are very secure. We need the router to be very secure with the Z-axis assembly to be very secure to the sled. All right, so I'm gonna tighten them up and then we'll take a look at it. And one more quick thing before we tighten it, make sure that your router bit is exactly in the center of this hole. So you've lined your router up with the hole. That's the whole reason why we didn't tighten this whole thing yet. Now that we got it built, we want to verify that the T-nuts spun sideways and that all of these are inlaid in those holes. So we want to make sure that those are all in there, which is super smooth. And then we want to look at the T-nuts, and it might be kind of hard. Let's see if I can line my camera up here. There we go. You can see that T-nut inside of there has turned sideways, and that's what we want. I had to unscrew some of these a little bit and then screw it back in while I was looking down into that track to make sure that they turned sideways. And I could even see that middle one too while I was kind of glancing in there, because you can kind of still see it moving. So you want to make sure that all those were on there so this whole thing is very secure. Now we're ready to attach our bricks. So we're going to need our sled, our bricks, and then bag C. That has everything in it to attach our bricks. And those are going to go right here. And the reason those bricks are important is because it helps gravity to keep the M2 down while it moves around on your cutting surface. So it's not bouncing around on there. It's pressed down onto the surface. Now we're ready to mount our bricks. So we're going to take these bolts and we're going to feed these up through the bottom here. And one thing I also should have mentioned is you are going to need a 10mm or centimeter wrench for this lock nut, because this side right here is actually going to have the lock nut on it. So we're going to get these bolts in here, and then we're going to take this and slide it on here. It doesn't really matter what side, but I like to have it on this side on the bottom. So then I'm moving this way. And then have our locking nut right here, or lock washer rather. And then our lock nut right there on top. Just kind of get it hand tighten there a little bit. And there we go. And then on this other side too, we're going to put this washer and the wing nut. There we go. And then now we can take our brick and put it on there. But I want to do this on both sides first, so I'm not trying to like lift this whole thing and like rock it back and forth as I'm moving it. So let me get the other side on too. All right, so I got both of them on there. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn this way so we can see. So I'm gonna kind of spin this out, take our brick, and then lay it on here. And you can see there's this line right here that really helps to line it up. So I can put this right here, and then I can take this, whoop, 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 whoop. There we go, get that back on there. And that washer, and this locking nut, there we go. And then this can kind of go through here. So this is so you can quickly take it off, this wing nut right here. But we want to get the lock washer really tight, and then the wing nut tight too. We can hand tighten the wing nut, maybe give it a little bit of a crank, but it doesn't have to be. We just want to make sure it doesn't ever come off. So if you want to give it a little bit of a crank with a wrench and you're worried about it, you absolutely can, because we want to make sure that this doesn't come loose. But we want to tighten this all the way down with our 10 here to get it nice and snug. And then once we get that snug on this side, we're going to do the same thing for the other side. My bricks are now secure. I can see these right here. These little lock washers are on those lock nuts. I tightened these wing nuts super tight. And I also made sure that it was lined up with this little line back here, so we can kind of check and make sure that's lined up. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect, but that line is a nice guide for it. So one thing that really helped me as a tip is to kind of pull up on these bolts, especially while I was using my wrench, to make sure that it locked, that little square bottom locked into the square cut in the sled. So that helped me a lot, so this bolt just wouldn't spin around in circles, or the bolt wouldn't spin around in circles while I was tightening the nut. So that can help a lot too. You can kind of like hold it in place while you're tightening it. So I made sure that we have our locking washers and our nuts on top on both sides. Our bricks are secured, and we're ready for the final step, which is to plug in our cord for our Z motor. So we're going to take our Z motor cord, and then we are going to plug it in right here. And this is a small end, and this is the longer cord that's in that group of 3 cords, and it's going to plug in right here. And then once we get it plugged in, we want to make sure it's seated all the way, which means it's completely plugged in. So push in to make sure that it's totally plugged in, because if it's not, it won't work right. And it's all the way plugged in, and that's the motor that will move the router up and down by tiny bits to do different depths of cuts. And now once that's on there, we can take our dust collection right here, and our little dust collection elbow goes right here. Now, I like to plug this in first and then the dust collection, because this is a tight fit on purpose, especially because it's hard to get in the sled. So you want to just kind of hold it and push down and really get it seated snug. There we go. So then now you can plug your hose into this, and it won't spew sawdust all over the place, or whatever other material that you're cutting. You can, if you want, to just leave it like this so it'll just spew everywhere. It's up to you. It does help to have this on here, though, at least, so it doesn't just spew straight up, because you don't want all of the dust and grime and everything just flying all over the place and all over your workspace. So you want to make sure that at least the elbow is on here if you're not using some sort of suction or vacuum cleaner or dust collector. So that is the final step of our sled building. And we built it! We did it! Woohoo! So now my next step is to build the frame that's going to go right here, and that's hopefully going to be this next week. That is my goal. And now I need a name for my new cutting robot. So if you want to leave a name in the comments, or we can come up with something awesome for this new robot to be. All right, well, happy cutting out there. I hope that this was really useful. If you need any help at all, feel free to reach out to us on email, social media, however you can get a hold of us. We're here to help. Take care.